Yeah, so he said, I'm Martin. It is true. There was one time I was here in 2013. I was a student and I served here for my internship as a requirement for my theological studies. That time I didn't have a lot of beard. I was not spoused. Now I have a wife and children, and I bring you greetings from them. They couldn't be here. Our daughter is doing some classes back in Kijabe, where we serve with AIC Church. And so I bring you greetings from my family and also from AIC Kijabe. Please receive them. I see you have a very daring theme for the year. And I'm not here to sympathize with you for the way you have journeyed through. But of course, this must be a very rigorous journey for you. And it must be a very daring theme. And even more daring right now is the sub-theme that you're having towards the close of the year. And you also know, probably from sociological sources, that towards the end of the year, there are also the temperatures or the rate of temptation keep increasing. I don't know why. And there is where you are also daring to hold your ground. And even more daring, you are calling it your ground. How daring could you be, holding our ground? And that sub-theme, from it, I was given a topic to handle, which is the corruption in the world, which is also another daring one, quite challenging and a huge topic, which of course I wouldn't do justice with the minutes we have in the service to deal with it as its whole. And so I have narrowed myself, guided by the Lord, on one aspect to do with corruption. And the aspect I am dealing with, of course, our text is from Genesis chapter 6. And I was given verse 12, but I have chosen to start from verse 5 and go all the way to verse 13. And when we look at this scripture, the verse that is most central is verse 12, and I will read through it. I'll read through my version, which is a little bit different from the one played there. Verse 12 says, "And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth." And when you look at this word corruption, I'm sure probably it's not the first time you are hearing it, especially if you live in this land of Kenya. We even have a whole agency that is paid by our taxpayers' money to look into the issues of corruption. Can you imagine someone is employed to look into the issues of this word? And so it's not a new word. Of course, even in the Old English, it was there. It is borrowed, of course, from the Latin and the Old French word corrabo, which in essence will give us the meaning, which the root of it, corromper, which is all together or breaking from, that togetherness or that oneness. And the opposite of it would give it the name of the house where the guys who are dealing with anti-corruption are housed. And in Kenya, that house is called what? Integrity House. And so that would be the opposite of this corruption. And most of you are scholars of mathematics. And you know, integrity is somehow connected with the root word of integer, which is somehow related with a whole number. It's a number that doesn't have a decimal, doesn't have a fraction. So in essence, it is being whole. It's being complete without nothing missing. And as they try to define it from ethical issues, they try to say it is being with no fraction. You know, it is being totally honest, being transparent, being that you don't do it, you don't take advantage for your personal gain. And such a threshold or such a standard, who can dare to approach it except IDC? And the standard is set already by the Lord, because it is Him who has created us with such a purpose. And as they try to look at this word, corruption is changing from the original state, trying to change it from the original purpose and the default settings that were set by the Lord. And as I introduce this topic this morning, I'm calling us for a change of mindset, resetting our mindsets. Because as we look into the issues of corruption, there's a lot that we can talk about. But in Kenya, the land which we live in and we love, there is a phone that is like this, and it has a Swahili name for it. Many of you might know that word. We can help those who don't know that word to know it. What is the common word that people use for this kind of a phone? Kadunda, there's another one. Kadund, there's another one. Kabambe, there's even another one ya kumulika. Mulika mwizi. And I don't know why people were so unfair for this phone, that it's used to, you know, just to light and look around and like a torch. And before you think that I'm here to sell phones, the same concept when God calls us the light of the world. And as we try and we live our lives, we are the light. In a world which God will call corrupt, the world which is so corrupted. Yet in this corrupt world, God looks at the world and says, is there a torch that can light and show the rest of the darkness that there is still light in the world? I know we live in a time when there is so much that people have normalized corruption. And people have looked even for nice words to call out and to nicely call corruption. There are even words that sometimes we use and we say, you know, it's a weakness I have, you know, and people do things and softly but sure they defraud and they do many other things, even from behind this pulpit, even from behind the place that is set to be so holy. And after we are confronted by all those things, we still sit and enjoy and have a cup of tea and have fun as though nothing whatsoever has happened. We live in a world where it is okay, it is normal, it is made to look like okay and obvious. That which before the eyes of God is not obvious and okay. And sometimes we sit in the same world, because Jesus prayed for us in John 17, and he said he doesn't pray that we be plucked out of this world, but we remain here to set an example and show forth who we believe in. And therefore we remain here in this world. And as we look at this scripture in Genesis, of course it's good to look back to it and light to it with a torch from New Testament, and I am titling my sermon, by the way, I was just introducing, I'm titling my sermon as Overcoming Corruption. I'm trying to be daring like IDC. Overcoming corruption, and I'm stemming my word from Romans 12 verse 2 and also verse 21, where when Paul was writing to the church, the people in Roman, and he tells them in verse 21 that overcome the evil and do not be overcome by it. And therefore, as I bring together, combining the word overcoming from the New Testament and the word corruption from Genesis 6, I think it's nice. It's a nice meal for this morning. So we can overcome this corruption. And as Paul writes, you know very well, in the beginning of chapter 12, he says, do not conform any longer to the patterns of this world. And what are the patterns of this world? Back to the days of Noah. People were living their lives as though nothing much is going on. Even as Noah is putting up the ark and everything, people are doing their lives as though nothing much is going on. The wickedness and the wrong things that were going on in the world of those days, it just appeared too normal for them, too obvious for them, that if you looked different, you look like, where do you come from? Where are you coming from? That you don't understand, hii ni Kenya, hii ni Africa, hii ni dunia, this is the world today. Where do you come from? They would look at Noah with a difference. And Jesus quotes it very well in Matthew 24, I think 37, when he says, when the Son of Man, the day of coming of the Son of Man, will be like the days of Noah, where people were eating, drinking, giving in marriage and getting married, and life looks normal. The idea is the world does not see it different like the way we see it different. They see it like their normal way of living. It's like when you meet someone who is not very well in terms of their mental health, which was celebrated just the other day, and the person doesn't wear clothes or is trying to remove clothes, he sees that like a normal thing in his world, probably, because of his mental state of health. And so when he is doing it, when someone removes a jacket, you say, well, maybe it's quite hot, right? And then someone goes ahead, like in this service, and removes a shirt. You will see some elders turning around and looking at the ushers and trying to wonder, you guys, you don't understand your job description for the service this morning. Someone is not in the normal state. But even he goes ahead and removes even the whatever verse. And now everybody is like, wow, something is not okay. Are we together? But can you imagine someone goes ahead, does that, not only removes their clothes, but shows up here in front of everybody and is just okay. And we are sitting and enjoying the movie and celebrating and just looking like nothing is happening. We are taking our notes, we are sipping our tea, and we're saying, can you show us next? That is the world we are in today. People do all manner of crazy stuff, all manner of corruptible things which are not right before God. And then in the evening, life goes on. It's a pattern. It has been patterned that way. It is the usual trend. Someone will look at you with a difference and wonder, why are you not joining the trend? But we are different because we hold the light to this world, which is dark. And we are not intimidated by the size of darkness, my friends. We know darkness can be a little bit intimidating, but it only takes one candle to change the narrative of the whole room, which might be so dark. Would you be that candle? Would I be that candle? That wherever God has placed you, you can change the narrative. That people can look around and say, I know if you are missing some grades, there are people who can easily sneak you some good grade. But for this one, ufala elewangi. And they call you bad names because you are so strict in the way you do your things and you are trying to live out your light. But the world, remember, does not appreciate that light. They will call you out and call you bad names. They will say you do not understand. They will say you are backward. They will say you are many other things. They would look for all manner of adjectives and descriptions to describe you. But would we be daring enough to still hold our ground and say, this is what I stand for? Like the man that we have him, Daniel. In the marketplace, out there before the king, and he would still dare and stand and say, even if you take me where, this is my ground. Take me to the head of department, I'm not changing my ground. Take me wherever you want, I'm not changing my ground. I'm not saying that we be rude. Please understand the statement, but it is holding on to our faith. And to do this morning, I propose to you 3 lessons that we can apply to overcome corruption. And first, I'm saying that overcoming corruption involves personal initiative. Overcoming corruption involves personal initiative, involves present continuous tense, involves personal initiative. And number 2, that overcoming corruption involves corporate initiative. And number 3, overcoming corruption involves divine initiative. Those 3 are the ones who wrestle with this morning. That overcoming corruption involves initiative. And 2, that overcoming corruption involves corporate initiative. And 3, that overcoming corruption involves divine initiative. I don't know why they put them 3, but as a good homiletician, I must also adhere to the 3. Not that it is always 3 points. It can even be many. I'm not sure Jesus had always 3. He had more than that. So looking at this, I want to draw your attention to verse 5 of Genesis 6. And I want to compare it with verse 9 of Genesis 6. So you can open Genesis 6 verse 5, hold there and go to verse 9 of Genesis 6. The Lord saw what the wickedness of man. Hold to that word, wickedness of man. Wickedness is a level. You know, of course, we know that sin is sin. But the level of punishment might also vary. There's a mess you can do in class, and the teacher says, next time. And there's something you can do, and he says, walk out, depending on what type of teacher. You know, and especially the discipline, whether he's a science teacher, humanities, you know, depends. There's another one who can just look at you and just ignore like nothing has happened. And that can also be the worst also. You know, you can just ignore for the moment and catch up with you. So the level of wickedness in the world today It is grown beyond human weakness. Sometimes we are shielding our wickedness in our human weakness. And we say, I struggle with telling the truth. It's not true. You are a liar. That is not weakness. That is wickedness. And it is personal. God is saying in verse 8, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man, singular. The wickedness of man, singular. And of course, the man here does not just represent, it doesn't just men in terms of gender. It's cutting across. It's just for every human being. So God saw human being. He doesn't say beings. He says me, Martin. Who can be daring enough and put their name but avoid the word wickedness? And say, the Lord saw Martin. Can you try and see whether your neighbor says it with all the confidence? And say, the Lord saw, and then you put your name. Can we try? The Lord saw who? You see, you remember what happened when Adam sinned? God came looking for them and he asked, where are you? You remember that thing? So God always looks out to us. But we have a problem. We don't say, I am here. We try to beat around the bush because Adam started talking about wardrobe. But God was asking about, location. Where are you? And then he's saying, my wardrobe, I don't have what? We are naked. Who has asked you that? So when the Lord calls us out, regardless of whatever we are saying, we are holding on to some things we have held on to for too long. And the Lord confronts us because it corrupts us. It changes us from God's original state and purpose that he had for you and for me. The original purpose that God had for John, for James, for Alice, for Mary, for whoever your name is, that is where you're supposed to focus. And God will always call us out to the person that we are. It is personal. Overcoming corruption involves personal initiative. Calling yourself out, putting your name there, and saying, it is me. It is I myself. I remember I went through the system that had standard 3, not grade 3. Standard 3 teacher used to punish us for saying sorry. Of course, you might be surprised, but don't be too surprised. Kenyan teachers are rated one of, some of the best teachers around, So she used to punish us. Most of them were she. She used to punish us for, with all respect to gender. She used to punish us for saying so. You know why? Because there's what she had taught us in the class, that when you mess around, she doesn't want you to just point out the word sorry. She wants you to make a full sentence. I, Martin, I am sorry for taking the pencil of Mary. Now when you say that, you are good in her books. But when you say, sorry, Mary, come here. Because he wanted to use the pronoun, confront yourself before you are confronted. Face it before it faces you. Confront it before it confronts you. Deal with it before it deals with you. Address it before it addresses you and then addresses you. Address it before it addresses you and then address you. And say, this is who anakuanga hivi. So address it before it's addressed by anyone else. So confront it. We all know Psalm 51. And when you go home, you can try to do that assignment and circle the pronouns that David used when he was confronted by Prophet Nathan when he had sinned. Look at the pronoun he uses there. He says, I. I wish you can put up Psalm 51 for us. It is I. He says, I. It is me. For I am conscious of my sin before me. In one sentence, 3 pronouns about I, me, and myself. Confronting your own corruption and wickedness and all the things that we are missing the mark in the presence of God. And not using I, me, and myself when we are doing the opposite. Having selfish personal gain and the wickedness that is in the world today, which is focused on me, my, and mine. I wish we can refocus, change our mindset and look at me. It is me, Lord, who did it. Yes? It is I. It is not this body that you gave me. It is me. Are we together? It is not my youthful issues. It is not my age. It is not my age. It is me who is wicked. I need your help, Lord. It is me and I and myself. Confront these words with verse 9, which says, these are the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. And Noah walked with God. Can you compare this, the same time God is saying wicked people, the same time before God a righteous man. And look at verse 8. He found favor in the eyes of the Lord. And look at his default settings that were said by his parents in chapter 5, verse 29. Lamech was his father. Look at what he said about Noah. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, out of the ground that the Lord has cast, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands. The original settings were intact. God, when he looked at you and where he has placed you and where he has placed me, his original settings are intact. Where he placed you, it is not by mistake that you are in a place which is full of so much corruption that you say, I wish I can be changed from the finance department to IT. My friend, when we change you to IT, we'll get you from the wickedness of money, and then we'll get you to the wickedness of technology, and your mind might even be more corrupt in terms of your morals. So it's like all over, but God has you. He knows all of us. Why we're saying it's personal? Because it also takes the person of God through Jesus Christ. Person to person. Person to person. Would you confront your person with the person of Christ? Galatians, when Paul writes to them, especially, in chapter 2, when he says that it is no longer I who liveth, but, verse 20, but Christ who lives in. Why does Christ live in you? Because chapter 5 of Galatians, verse 25 and 26, you have crucified. You have put yourself there. You have said, yes, this is my flesh, but I crucify there. Someone has to take all the broken pieces to the table. And that is our biggest problem. We don't want to mulika ourselves and bring all the broken pieces to the table. Let us try to do what some preachers do nowadays by engaging the neighbors. I hope you are in good terms with your neighbor. Look at them and tell them, my neighbor. This is getting personal. Yes. If you had been given a chance, let's say Bishop Oginde is the one chairing the Anti-Corruption Commission, right? When his term expires, but if maybe he's caught up with these issues, can he be impeached? He is unimpeachable. So if he happens to not be seat, and you are given a chance to propose a name, and the church is asked, propose for us a Bible character, and imagine that God can raise that Bible character back to life and give them to chair the anti-corruption in Kenya. Whose name would you propose to be raised for us from the dead, from the Bible characters, to be in charge of Kenya anti-corruption, so that we can put away every corruption in our land? Who do you think can be tough on us, or who can help us to deal with that? Who? Elijah, Joseph, Daniel. You have good names. In the spirit of fairness, I will also give my name. I would say Job. And I will tell you one reason why I quote Job. Job is quoted with the same words which are quoted with Noah here. In chapter 1 of Job, where he says he was blameless, right? And found righteous before God. But also he faced a lot of stuff. Remember, he was a wealthy man. And the Bible does not record him having several wives. Wealth is, I don't know what is the relationship between wealth and and women. I don't know. But you can imagine, in those days, there was, the Holy Spirit had not been on earth like the way he is with us now as our helper, yeah? He was coming and going. You remember that story? There was no law, because the book of Job is set up in a way that looks like it was pre-times of law, right? It was in those old times. Are we together? So Moses had not come with rules and how to engage in social life and everything. But this man is found wealthy, with children, with a lot of wealth and so much. And yet verse 21 of Job 1 says, in all these things he did not sin against God. But he was also a wise man. If you look at verse 31, what he says in verse 1 will shock you. I think he was not very young. But in verse 31, chapter 31, verse 1, he mentions and says he has made a covenant with his eyes, I was trying to review your past sermons, and I saw in the beginning when you had prayer and fasting and beginning and all that, and the covenants you were trying to make with God. And remember, this is a man who made a covenant with his eyes, not to look lustfully at a virgin, at a girl. And he was not a teenager. It is not an age problem, it is a nature problem. Confront it through the person of Jesus Christ. Not only personal initiative, but also corporate. Why do we say corporate? These are times when God everybody and says all of them. In fact, he says he will wipe away the whole thing. Not only human beings, but everyone. He was angry. He uses words which I want you to confront. In verse 6, he says, the Lord regrets that he had made man. And the same feeling of a God who regrets, in verse 8, he is showing favor. The same God who is so agitated by the evil and wickedness in our land today is also showing us his grace, the favor of God, so that we can turn and look up to him. And what Jesus Christ started for us, it is that corporate, that oneness, knowing that you are not only personal at your own level, you are also part of the other person. I'm not alone in this journey. Look at your neighbor in a way that looks like to suggest, not to sympathize, but to comfort them and say, even if it is personal, you are not alone. I am also there. You know? When God looks at us, he sees a forest. We are all there. But together as a body, we encourage each other. You hold each other up. Look at the sons of Noah and what they did when their father was out of order, when he had taken, what he took in verse 20 of chapter 9. And he was there without any clothes, just there, exposing himself. And his son Canaan did the thing, watched and did all that and just went like it is business as usual. But his brothers were like, this is not business as usual. They hold him and they take the whatever, and they go backward and they cover their dad. Are we together? And Galatians 6 verse 1 and 2, Paul draws us the same and says, if your brother is in a mess, in a godly, in a loving way, bring each other into the right perspective. So that means it is a corporate responsibility. When you see me in the wrong, when I see you in the wrong, with a lot of love, we correct each other. We bring each other into the right order. So when you see people walking and telling you, hey sister, I don't think this one is all right or this is okay, don't start arguing. Look at this fool. He does not understand he was ordained as he was set apart as an elder. A whole elder of the church. What is he doing? This one, he does not understand he is in the choir, he is in the worship team. He does not understand. But nobody has taken the personal initiative as a corporate responsibility of going and confronting our brother and telling him, you do a very good job as our keyboardist. I'm not calling out on you, my brother. Although I don't know why the worship and the people in the music, many times things call out on you. But if someone comes and confronts and tries to tell you, I don't think this one and this one, don't be argumentative about it. Have an attitude that is of humility and appreciation and say, wow, thank you. I will put it into order. But we have a problem many days nowadays. No one wants to be confronted with any issue. You come around and you say, Pastor, you have misquoted the scripture. You have said 1 Corinthians instead of 2 Corinthians. Then I look at you and try to argue with you and say, by the way, you did what degree in hermeneutics? What are you arguing? Can you just be in order? Or start saying, you don't touch the anointed man of God. You know what I mean? No, we should be ready to corporately take it up and say, Lord, if my brother is in the wrong, it's also painting me in the wrong picture. When Noah is open here and naked, it's not good for his family. When one of us is struggling in an issue that they are struggling with, it's not good for our family. When one of us is struggling in the class and they are doing all manner of things, and the rest of the people are saying, who are IDC. This one is even a leader in IDC. It is not painting well on us. When someone else is pointing something, it's not painting well on us. We need to take up and know. It also takes one another for us to reach home. That we can sing that beautiful song When we get to? Yes. When we see each other, having held my hand, having held your hand, everyone walking together, helping each other towards the Lord. And finally, it's divine. If you look at the story of Noah here, in it, the Lord saw, the Lord did, the Lord found favor, the Lord. Corruption is squarely and properly a spiritual issue. I know that those who are in ethics might have a scholarly problem with my statement when I say that it is a spiritual issue. But from my theological perspective, I have no apologies to say that the wickedness of the humanity has everything to do with our spirituality. We cannot deny that. And therefore, it will only take the divine. Do you think Elijah would make that teacher change his mind? Do you think Elijah being in charge would make someone who is colluding and planning all manner of evil and defrauding and everything? Do you think they would? It's only God who can do it. And so the ground we are talking about is not ourselves. It's not good upbringing. There are those who brag and say, me, the way I've been brought up, my friend, our background, you cannot touch anything belonging to somebody, which is very good. But some time might come when you are in your 60s and you do the unthinkable and people say, what? Who was that? You remember David, when he was a little boy, everybody was, wow, this is a great man. You remember? Remember when he was a little bit older and he walks around the roof and I don't know what was pornographic in his view as he watches Bathsheba bathing. What is pornographic in bathing? He watched there, but full of wickedness. Not the boy. You remember the boy, teenager, very good one. But later on, because human wickedness grows in a person. And it wants to comfort itself and say, I'm good. I have a very nice ground. I have a very good system. I have a very good supervisor. I have a very good, everything is so organized. It is full of CCTVs here. We cannot do anything. It is not about all those things. It's all about our hearts being transformed by Jesus Christ. Because you can be a very neat, very organized, very clean sinner. But very neat, very organized. You do all manner of things and you destroy all the evidence which we are using for our theme. You're laughing and it is true. The information we have, sometimes ago we used to think that we educate our people, we bring all the information and we'll bring transformation in our communities. But it is so surprising. Information does not guarantee transformation. People are still doing all manner of dirty, wicked things with all the information they have got. We train very good accountants, very smart, well educated, but they use their great smartness to defraud and destroy every evidence of corruption. We can train accountancy, but the heart requires divinity. It requires God. It requires God to take up to you and say, I know that my people in my generation are doing all manner of things, but I choose to be different. So help me, God. I know that there are many young people who cannot be entrusted with this and this and this and all the technology, but I choose to be different because Noah was a different man in a very wicked generation. And so this morning, it's now afternoon, I'll be calling you to do one thing, to submit yourself to this God. and say, Lord, I cannot do it by my own strength. I need you. And not only need you, but I desperately need you. Because our thoughts and our inclinations, the words that have been used here in Genesis, have also been used by Jeremiah when he says, the heart of man, so wicked, who can understand it? Desperately wicked. We desperately need God. Don't say, oh, you know me, I'm a mature Christian. I've gone through all the discipleship and everything. In fact, there are things which don't bother me. You know, I'm home and dry. You know, there are things which they are not an issue to me. That is not a weakness of bragging. That is wickedness of pride. Come down, my brother, my sister, and say, Lord, I desperately need you. If there is a call that is so urgent this hour, is for desperation of our souls to look up to Christ. It is not a call of desperation and despair that we say, oh, we are doomed, we are hopeless. No, we are still marching in great victory because we are a victorious team. It doesn't matter how many will do opposite, but we believe there will always be a remnant that will be holding the torch of truth and the light of God high and marching to victory, to Zion, and say, we shall get home even in our generation. In a time when marriage, the fabric of marriage and family is faced by so much corruptible issues which are not right before God, there are still marriages and families that will stand and be a role model and say, yes, we are there to glorify Jesus Christ. And we are there. In a time when there is all manner of things, there are still people who stand up and say, I know we have scholars who have compromised, but we have scholars who have stood and held to the light. I know we have many young people who have done, but I choose to be different. Be daring enough and hold on to the light of Christ. The church of Jesus Christ will never be defeated when we hold each other up and march towards victory. Yes, I know we have many challenges even nowadays, especially because of the level of wickedness and depravity and many other things which are characterized even in the house of the Lord, that people have done all manner of mess. But you know what? Yes, some people might do all manner of things, but Christ still remains to be Christ. We do not preach Christianity, we preach Christ. There are many people who want to brag, to make Christianity look so bad and look so bad that you can almost feel like, oh, will I say I'm saved? Will I say I'm a pastor? We do not just preach Christianity, we preach Christ. And Christ is never compromised. Christians may fail, but Christ will never fail. Christians may disappoint, but Christ will never disappoint. Not my word, I said may, because we are human beings. And in your whatever that says, you know, we are desperate for you. You know, I don't know if you have it, or whatever song that you have. I'm sure you guys know your description well. I'm sure you have prepared nice song for us, that we can go before the Lord and say, Lord, we come, me as a person. I also come, me as a family man. I bring it as a corporate. I also come, me as a worker. I also come, me as a Kenyan. I also come, me as an African. By the way, there is no people who are tagged with the tag of corruption. It's not a continental issue. It is more than continental issue. It's a heart issue. Confront yourself. Don't confront nobody. Today, confront yourself and confront before Christ. Even as I call Reverend to close us in prayer.